Hi, everyone. How are you today? My name is Leticia Barr. I'm a parenting influencer, a former middle school computer science teacher in Montgomery County, Maryland, and I'm on the responsibility.org Education Advisory Board. I also work with them as an education consultant. I want to thank Danny, Markeith, and Sakura for taking time out of their day and training schedules to join us. So I'd like to invite them to introduce themselves and where they're signing in from. Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Hi.
So glad to have you here today. I think I would like us to start by just having you introduce yourselves and let us know where you're signing in from today, as I know training has started for you. So go ahead, someone take it away.
Okay, I can. My name is Danny Yerovich. I'm a two-time U.S. Paralympian in track and field, Nordic skiing, and biathlon. I am getting ready for the winter season to begin, but I'm actually in sunny San Diego today for an event in the adaptive sports community with the Challenge Athletes Foundation. So I just arrived here to do a ton of different volunteer work with an adaptive sports weekend.
Fantastic. Markeith, would you like to share a little bit about yourself and where you're
Yeah, of
signing in from
course.
today?
I'm signing in from Baltimore. That's one of the bases that I uh do my training in, and I'm also from Baltimore. So, um, getting ready for the Pan American Championships that will be in Santiago, Chile, and my sport is track and field. So I'll be running the 100, and I'm doing something new. I will be throwing the javelin and there.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. You're not that far away from me. We're both in Maryland. That's
Yep.
fantastic. Sakura, I hear you're a little bit farther away than Maryland and the East Coast. Let us know
Yeah,
who you are and where you are right now.
yeah, definitely. Hi, everybody. My name is Sakura Kokumai. I am a karate athlete and also an Olympian. I am signing in from Hungary, Budapest. I just flew in a couple of hours ago. We have a World Championships that's coming up starting next week, Tuesday. So I'm here to compete in that. Right after that, I will have to fly directly to Chile for the Pan American Games. So I don't know if I'll bump into you, Markeith, but
Hey, we'll see.
that's where I am right now.
Hopefully you will. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your schedules to join us today. And a huge thanks to the teachers and the students who are joining us live and those who will watch this later on. Teachers, if you could put in the chat where you're signing in from and where your classrooms are, we'd love to know. So feel free to pop that in the chat whenever you get time in the next 30 minutes or so. Okay. So while you're here today with us, we hope that you'll learn new strategies to make smart choices this year that keep you on track to reach your goals, because that's what it's all about, right? And we're here to thank Ask, Listen, Learn and Classroom Champions who have partnered for the past decade to help kids understand the power of saying yes to a healthy lifestyle and no to underage drinking. So I'm going to just start by inviting each of you to share a moment when you could have easily made a poor decision, but your athlete mindset kept you on track. Sakura, would you like to start?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Growing up, I was in Japan and Hawaii, going back and forth. Started karate at the age of 7, started competing at the age of 14. Now, as an athlete, as a young athlete competing, we have different schedules than everybody else in our at school. So for me, it was really difficult in a sense where I wanted to do what everybody else is doing, right? I knew at a young age I was a little bit different in terms of schedule, what I was doing on a day-to-day basis, and I just wanted to fit in. It all came from that. It's not of what I wanted to do with the kids, whether underage drinking wasn't a thing for me growing up, but it's just making certain decisions, right? And the motivation was, oh, I want to do it not because I want to, but because everybody else is. And I wanted one reason for me to fit in it with everybody. But I think I had a strong goal in my sport and I want to do well in it. And in the back of my head, I had my coach, and for karate, I had senseis, instructors. So I think having a sport and having a goal within the sport has definitely helped me stay away from making decision that everybody else is making. Knowing that I was a little bit different too, I think helped a little bit with that. Yeah.
Well, The motivation to fit in is such a powerful force. So if that was your motivation, that's great. Markeith, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Okay. So something similar, but just more of uh, when I was a child or younger, I know that there was always crowds of people or people that I wanted to hang out with as well. It wasn't more about being cool; it was more about just they were doing the wrong things. So just maybe getting into things that would not be really good, and they wanted me to come along with them, and that wasn't a good decision, and that's something that I made sure to stay away from, even though it might have been a childhood friend or someone that I knew from school, but I had to really stay away from what they were doing. And I think making those decisions, thinking about um, wanting to be an athlete, and actually, I had the dream to be a Paralympic athlete since I was like 14 years old. Before I knew what the Paralympics were, I wanted to be an Olympian. So I kind of knew like my path at a young age. Like, if I'm going to do this, I need to do right. So just trying to stay away from just like negative influences. That's something that I really worked on, and just kept it stayed focused.
It can be so hard to stay away from negative influences, but we're so glad for your focus and your drive and determination to meet your goals. Danny, I'm going to ask you the same question about a time you could have easily made a poor decision, but your athlete mindset kept you on track.
I think, to piggyback off of both of what the other athletes have said, it is a lot about who you surround yourself with. And so even in my adult life, when I am trying to balance this weird world of professional athlete training, working, and having a social life and being a normal human being, I think it's making sure you have people around you who also respect and understand what you're doing. And maybe they're not on this same track themselves, but trying to find people who are like-minded and have those types of almost boundaries set up that they are willing to say no if something doesn't work for them in their schedule. I think the biggest thing for me when I was a collegiate athlete and now as a professional athlete is really prioritizing sleep. And that often is saying no to a lot of things, but I think it's one of the most important things I find in training. So even if it's not necessarily a negative influence, but it's a busy day of having to be involved in a lot of stuff, even being at events like the one I'm at this weekend, is being able to prioritize and really respect my own boundaries and know what I need as an athlete and be willing to say no. And other people will understand when you do have to step away for the evening or something like that. But I think it's really just trying to prioritize your training ultimately, and people will understand and hopefully respect those decisions. So if you ever do have to step away, say no to an event or an activity, people, I think, will be quick to understand in those situations.
Well, certainly things like prioritizing sleep, it can seem like a small decision, but it's actually a huge decision and part of that decision-making process that leads to that bigger decision and the bigger goal. So even things like everyday decisions like what to eat as part of a healthy breakfast or skipping an outing, I can see how those boundaries are really, really important to keeping you focused, like Markeith said, and wanting to do well, like Sakura said. So thank you for each sharing your perspective on that question. Markeith, I'm going to turn it over to you. After you lost your sight, how did your definition of community change? Can you speak to your experience and how surrounding yourself with encouraging and supportive people have helped you determine your path? Actually, I think you covered that already in entirety. So thank you for that. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that question?
For sure. So I think one, I to add and just to answer the question, I actually was born with my sight. And so like how it is right now. And that meant that my community in a certain way had to step up, which were my parents. And I know my grandparents, they stepped up as well and just taught me how to build a community surrounded. They already had what you would call a village. And so really just taking from that into my adulthood, really that's something that I continue to work on, is really developing my community by finding people that I can support, being a supporter of others, and just surrounding myself with just good influence, and also me being a really good influence. So that's something that I really, really work on. And I think ultimately that, when it comes to the vision and my eyesight, the people that I surround myself are just understanding, and they may not understand everything, but that's okay. They know that I have a little bit of sight and I work hard and I do a lot of great things. And I think it's the same thing for those people that I support. So I think it's one of those things where you kind of just work together, and that's how you develop a good community, a good village.
Well, thanks so much for elaborating on the importance of community, because I think that leads into our next discussion around peer pressure. As a group discussion, can we just talk about the power of peer pressure, both positive and negative? Because we know peer pressure, sometimes it has a negative connotation, but at other times, especially from a community aspect, it can be a source of positive pressure. How can you feel kids can be a force of positive peer pressure in their environment? Sakura, would you like to kick that off?
Sure. But like you said, positive and negative, right? I think growing up, I was very um I was very fortunate to have good people around me, but I was also aware of who to put around me as like a friend group. And in a positive side, everybody, I'm just gonna piggyback what the athlete said too, but everybody understood my schedule, so they kept asking me to go out on a good thing, right? Just to like watch movies or hang out. And every single time I did have to say no, but they understood the reason why, but they were trying to be good friends, so they still ask anyways. So that kind of stuff has always been good. And they were like, oh, if you cannot go here, then maybe we can just meet up before we go to school, right? So that kind of group setting has definitely helped me. I personally never been in a situation where my friends peer pressured me to do something really bad. I The only time was when I ended up being with the wrong people, with the wrong friends. And that's when it wasn't even a question, oh, we have to do this, so we're going to go. And I had to physically put myself away from that situation because they never even asked to. It was like, okay, you're part of us now, so you have to do this, right? So that's where I had to build my boundaries, whether I had to say it or just physically just step out, knowing that it was not going to be good for me. So that positive and negative energy is real and it's out there. So I would say that, just be aware of who you surround yourself with, and people who care about you, people who care about your goals, what you want to achieve. They're going to support you no matter what. So picking and choosing those people, even till now as an adult, I do the same thing. But I think the true people will stick with you and they would understand.
Danny, when you were younger, how did you choose friends who would help you, that would help support your goals? And what advice would you have for the students who are listening?
My advice to the students is to really think about what it is you ultimately want, and to try to surround yourself with people who have maybe similar goals or other goals that are also at the forefront of their brain, whether it's something related to sports, getting good grades in school, as you get older, getting into maybe a university or college that you're really interested in. I think that you are always an individual and you can make your own decisions, but oftentimes, unfortunately, in this world, we are often judged on the people that we surround ourselves with. So you do want to make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that you think are a good image of what you would like to be. And I think as we grow up and we're trying to navigate this world and figure out where we belong in it, we will go through a lot of friends, and a lot of our friends aren't meant to last forever, unfortunately. There are those few that hopefully will be through many stages of our lives, but there's also going to be friends who came for a period of time that maybe taught you something really positive that you were able to take moving forward. Or there's also those friends that will come and maybe teach us something that we know won't be what we want in a friend in the future, or an action that we didn't agree with that now we can learn from that. So I think it's trying to just find those people, but also being okay when it's time to move on from those people as well.
Well, thank you for providing that advice to the students who are listening and the teachers as they support them. Friendships can be hard and peer pressure can be tricky, but like you've all said, having a village and developing that community of people who support you is so important. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. The next thing that we want to talk about is um, it's a group question again, but we all know that underage drinking is a bad choice to make. But can each of you speak to how, as an athlete, the choices you make, both in childhood and while still developing into the athlete you are today, impacts you and your ability to compete and stay focused? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Um, I'll start by just when it comes to just the focus of your sport, when you're an adult and when you're a child, I think when you are a kid, it's more of you you just want to really do the thing that you see maybe on TV, or you see the adults doing, or you see somebody cool doing. And it's like, for me, track and field, I mean, I love all the sports out there, right? I love to do all the sports, but track and field, I saw my cousin run. And because my cousin was running and I was always one of the fastest kids in school, I wanted to run track. Um, and knowing how, like, what type of decisions I needed to make started to really shape themselves as I got older into the sport. So into my teenage years, I started to see, oh, okay, I'm getting better, I'm getting faster. And so that meant that I need to make certain decisions to stay focused and determined. I think determination is a really good word, actually, because if you have the goal and you're determined to get to that goal, I think that when it comes to back to the negative type of peer pressures or things, you have that goal in your mind and that determination that you're wanting to get to that space or that place, that allows you to stay focused. Now, I do think that finding those group of people that you can have fun with, maybe it's playing cards, maybe it's playing some games and doing things that are still fun, but just not going into the peer pressure of doing negative things like underage drinking.
I love that you talked about determination as a force and then still finding the people that you can have fun with. And it goes back to what we were saying before, finding those people in your community who can support you. Danny and Sakura, do you have something that you'd like to add to the question of um, how in
Um,
childhood, while still developing into the athlete you are today, the impacts of your decisions?
yeah, for sure. I'll go. I can confidently say that every decision that I made since I was a kid, or the habit of making decisions, has definitely got me to where I am. But those decision makings didn't come easy, for sure, because when you're a kid, you don't know what to base it off of. You have a goal, but sometimes making decisions can be tricky. Is this right? Is this wrong? I want to do this, but should I? Right? It looks cool, but can I do it? Should I do it? And like the yes and no becomes clear as you get older. But when you're a kid, I can totally understand how challenging and hard it is, especially now with social media too. I think the amount of information and exposure we have to certain things is much more than when I was a kid. So I can't imagine, all the information that's out there for the kids right now. But for me, what helped was thinking about my idols, right? Thinking about not just in my sport, karate, but I idolize so many athletes from the Olympics, and I read about them like through books or watching them doing interviews. And I would think, would this athlete do this? Like, would this athlete make this decision? Right? So I would try to Not saying they will have the same problem because you're a kid, but I would think about my idol, like somebody that I was looking up to, whether that is my coach or an athlete, and I would base it off of that. I was like, nah, he or she wouldn't do this, so I'm not gonna. Right? And I remember specifically making that kind of decision, and now becoming an athlete, knowing who I am more, that yes and no, stepping away definitely become easier. So I think for the kids, I think if you don't, when you don't know what to do, I would think about somebody in your family, somebody in your community that you look up to, and try to see if they would make the same decision. And that should be like a very clear um, answer.
Yeah, you said two things that I want to go back to. One was about the difficulty in making decisions. And we know that brains are not fully developed in kids until well after, you get through your teens and into your 20s. So the decision-making process can be tricky, especially when you're thinking about in the moment. And kids don't always have the ability to think long term, the cause and effect. And the students who are watching us today, your brains are still very much developing. And so sometimes decisions can be really tricky to make because those parts of your brain aren't fully developed yet. So, I think you said too about the importance of finding your idol, following your idols and thinking about how they would make these decisions and looking to your role models. So I love that you mentioned that, because if you have a specific person in mind and students are thinking about like, well, what would that person do? It might be a little bit easier to make those hard decisions and follow that right path to stay focused. Danny, what would you like to add to the conversation about this topic?
I love what Marquise said about following what is considered cool, and how our perception of also what is cool or what is something to be respected or looked up upon changes a lot. So it's like, while we're growing up, maybe that person who is leaning into negative peer pressure, doing something, it has this perception of being cool. But I think when you really analyze what you enjoy and what you want, those figures become cool. And that definitely plays into that concept of an idol. Like now, I think it's really cool when people do well in school or find great success in their career. And so thinking about those actions that can lead to that, and it can be so challenging at times, especially when the people around us maybe aren't having those same thoughts and are giving in to negative peer pressure, but trying to always keep in the forefront of your mind, like, I think actually doing this is really cool. Like playing this sport really well to me is really cool. So how are my actions lining to that? And sometimes there might be hiccups in the journey, but always trying to keep that at the forefront of what your goals are and what your actions are to lead to those goals. Because I think something that seems often so far away, like a big goal of going to the Olympics or getting into a college or making the varsity team in high school, they seem really far off, but everything we do every day eventually leads to that. And each day you chip away at that goal a little bit. So if you're not making good deposits to get to that goal, you might be actually setting yourself back.
Right. And you mentioned hiccups. It's not always a smooth road. I'm sure each of you could talk about a moment where, something in your path didn't go exactly the way you expected, but it's not to say that you can't recover and, you stumble and you fall and you get back up and you keep going and you kind of readjust, right? So I love that you mentioned that. Are we ready for some questions from our teachers from our schools?
Yeah, let's go.
You've given such great responses. So we have some fabulous questions from our teachers. And so my first question is from Deb Rubio from HDPA School. And her question is, how do you overcome fear and anxiety? And I'll just open this up. Any of you can take it. All of you can respond, however you want to do it.
That's I'll go. If that's okay.
Of course. Go ahead, Marquise.
So I think that one is a good question, because I think as athletes we deal with fear and anxiety well sometimes, and then sometimes we crash and fall. Um, but those are learning lessons, and those are ways that we can practice overcoming our fear. I think I always say to a lot of people, to be brave meant that you had to overcome your fear. And so every day that I went out there on the track, um, or every time I line up for the 400 meters, or even when I was in school. I started my grad program about 3, 4 years ago, and I finished last year. And I didn't think that they were going to have the tools for me as a visually impaired person to get them done, to like really finish my degree. Um, because like my bachelor's degree was tough, and I had like a tough time with that, and I was able to graduate with honors and with a 4.0. And I think I had to practice overcoming my fear day in and day out, and I was able to complete that. But then also on the track, I think, like I said, every time I line up, I could have different feelings. I could be nervous, I could be super excited. And I think that is just a way of practicing. And just to really answer the question, one technique that I kind of use is just counting maybe to 3 or 10, or just really finding a way to meditate and self-talking, doing some self-talking to myself, and telling myself, "Hey, I got this. I've done all the training. I've done this, or I put in all the preparation and all the work. So if I'm nervous before like a 400 meters, I kind of just do that practice of giving myself like some good words or good affirmations, and that really allows me to overcome my fears and be brave, be courageous."
That's great. I see a quote going up in classrooms all over. Being brave means that you have to overcome your fear. So if I were still in the classroom, I would absolutely put that up in my computer lab. That's fantastic. Thank you for those words of wisdom. My next question is from Antonio Andrade from San Gabriel Avenue Elementary School. And I'm going to direct this to Sakura. Can you take us through a day in your life as you prepare for the next event? So given that you're in Hungary, feel free to let us know what your time there looks like.
Right on the timeline too. Can you take us through a day in your life as a prepare? I would like to point out and say that I am a very anxious and nervous person in general. It might not show when I'm in the ring, when I'm performing, when I'm doing my sport, but it does come from just repetitions of back to back. And now I know about myself more compared to when I was a kid. A lot of trial and errors of what to do to get through the anxiety, because that's what it's all about in terms of prepping for events. Like how do I react? Like what do I do? Obviously the technique needs to be there in terms of athletic side, like everything needs to be perfect and ready to go. But at the end of the day, it's all about the mental game. And I currently have it down to like numbers where um because my sport is not a number sport. It's very subjective and it's performing, and they judge you based off of how well you execute certain techniques. So it's a lot of critiquing, a lot of me training, performing, recording myself, getting critiqued by coaches, critiquing myself. And that cycle gets very toxic sometimes because that self talk is always, I can do that better. Like, why did I look like this? I should be able to do this. It's all part of the training process. But I have learned that when it comes to at least 10 days before competition, I shut that off. Like, it does not matter how it looks. When it gets 10 days before, for me, I only say good things about myself. And one of those fake it till you make it situations where I only good vibes. And if I can't get it right, I do it until I feel good about it. Like if I can get it by 10 reps, I was like maybe 11. And once I get 11, I'm like, good, done. If I get it in the first try, I do it, done. I don't touch it anymore. So it's all about, for me, getting the mental game like strong. And I need to make sure I'm just in a really good place. And that's where what I'm focusing on right now. Honestly, just putting myself first. Like tonight, I'm gonna make sure I get some good sleep, I get good food, stay hydrated, and that all connects to how you feel and how you perform. So in terms of preparing it, surprisingly, it's not about just a body, it's about just taking care of yourself and like feeling good.
Taking care of yourself and feeling good, I think we could all agree those things are really key. In addition to all the other things you've said today about community building, surrounding yourself with people, all those, you've had so many wonderful nuggets of wisdom that you've shared with students and teachers around the country today. So I want to just first thank you for your time, for joining us today, because we are about out of time. I feel like we could have kept talking for like 30 more minutes. But I know you're busy and you have training and other things to get back to today. So huge thanks for joining us today, as well as teachers and students who took time out of their classrooms and their schedules to join us. We appreciate time that you took to learn new strategies, and we hope that these will help you make smart choices and keep you on track to reach your goals this year. I want to direct you to classroomchampions.org/smart-decisions for mindful minute videos and prompts on these exact topics that we talked about today. Also, you can find a link to Ask, Listen, Learn's resources, like a full suite of videos on how alcohol affects the developing brain at asklistenlearn.org. So thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it. And we wish you all the best as you train for your next event.
Thank you.
Thank you.